Welcome back to Concept Soup, back on YouTube. That's right, I've been gone out of my usual upload schedule, and that is because I have been building my personal PC, which is what I do all the video editing on. It is this one right here, this absolute beauty in the corner. It is my first time doing hard loop liquid cooling. I've done plenty of soft loop stuff before, but I thought I'd have a go at the hard loop stuff, just so that I can say, yes, I'm able to do that. It was very, very challenging, but the result was quite stunning. So I'm really happy this has sort of completed my desk setup now, and we'll get a nice shot of the whole setup that I'm using now. I've pretty much got everything I could ask for, so let's enjoy that together. But of course, we've got a word from our sponsor, which, as you know, is JCPCcustoms.com, which is where you can pick up a brand new gaming PC. There's 3 ways to get your hands on a new PC. We've got our ready to go PC section, which is where you can pick out PCs that we've already spec'd up for you. You buy it, it's in your hands within 2 or 3 business days. If you make some modifications to it, it sometimes takes a bit longer. So that's the quickest way to do it. You know it's going to have a nice balanced specification. The other way is we've got an on-site configurator where you can sort of choose from a list all the different parts that you want to put together. You can sort of customize it a bit more that way. Or the third way to do it is to get a custom spec service. So this is where you submit what you want to us in a Google form, and then we get back to you with what we're able to do and the pricing, and then we sort it all out, and it's completely bespoke to you that way. So you can literally have the PC however you want, including any kind of liquid cooling. We just don't ship out any hard loop liquid cooling because it does tend to get smashed up in transit, but we will do the soft stuff and ship it. But yeah, those are the ways to get your PCs. Sometimes we've got some spare stock that occasionally we'll have graphics cards. We've got plenty of power supplies at the moment, those kind of things in case you're looking for an extra little part or something like that and you want to help us out. We tend not to price them too high, so we're not super scalping them, but we do need to make a profit, so just bear that in mind. JCPCcustoms.com, go and check it out. It's UK only at the moment, so sorry to any international viewers. And that's the end of the ad spot, so let's get straight back to that video. So I'm going to start off by saying I'm going to apologise because this audio quality is probably really bad. And the reason for that is I bought a Samsung S20 because it's got a better camera, and I needed a new phone anyway. But I didn't realise it didn't have a 3.5mm jack, and then that means that I cannot use my lapel microphone, which isn't ideal. So we're just using the built-in microphone for this video, and I'm sure I'll be able to sort out something a bit more professional for next time. But let's talk about hardline liquid cooling. You must think, with all that cooling, you must be having the fastest computer ever. Well, the reality is, of any kind of custom loop liquid cooling, it's mainly for looks. Unless you're a very, hardcore overclocker, there's not really any reason to put this extra cooling into the PC, because PC parts these days, they're actually quite well designed and they're not going to burn themselves out, and they're so well binned that they're going to be working to their max potential even with very modest cooling. So going for something like this is pretty much just for the looks and for the fun experience of doing it. But that's not to say it's not worth doing, it just depends on your usage, and you just got to know that this is mainly a looks thing and a style thing, something that's going to make it very unique, rather than something that's going to actually make the day-to-day performance much better. Even in terms of noise, you're not going to gain that much in terms of keeping it nice and quiet, because nowadays 360mm liquid coolers for your CPU are fairly ubiquitous, and they're not too expensive. And if you get a decent model of video card, they're not going to be very loud. I mean, I haven't used any bad models of RTX 3080, 3070, etc. Probably, to be honest, I'm trying to think of any graphics card that I've used that's been obnoxiously loud, and I can't think of any. The only one that really springs to mind was the MSI Mech RX 5700 XT. That was really quite loud, but aside from that, I found graphics cards not to be very loud at all. So yes, it is mainly an aesthetic concern, but it's fun, but it's real fun, or in this case, very frustrating. But let's get into the parts list, and then we'll go over some of the bits of the build and some chats through. Maybe it's your first time doing a hard loop and you want a few tips. Of course, let's get that parts list ready for you now. Get a cup of tea, get a glass of water, because it's going to be a long one. So Let's start with the core components and we'll do the cooling parts separately. So the CPU is the Ryzen 9 5950X. Now this PC is not just for gaming, it's also for creating the content that you see here on the channel. I do animations for adverts and also gaming as well. I do lots of things on this computer, so it's a prosumer desktop, and that's why I went for the 16 core, top end chip. If you're just a pure gamer, or even if you're a gamer doing a little bit of streaming on the side, something like a Ryzen 7 5800X is going to be within 2 to 3% of the gaming performance of this top end CPU. So really, for gaming, the Ryzen 9s are a bit overkill, but I need it for my prosumer workloads. That's what I keep telling myself. So that's why we've gone with that. For the cooling, we'll get onto that later. That's the custom loop, of course. The memory we're using on this today is Crucial Ballistics. That's 4 lots of 16, making 64 gigabytes. It's DDR4 3600 CL16. It's the white stuff, and it's the stuff with the RGB on it as well. So it's going to have that nice style. I did originally want to use this Team Group stuff, this ARGB Extreme. Didn't work with the motherboard. Same with G-Skill, didn't work with the motherboard, unfortunately. And that brings us on to the motherboard, which is the Gigabyte X570S Aero G, which is one of these new Gigabyte motherboards there with the silent chipset on it. The reason I chose this is, one, because it's white and that's going to look very nice with the build that we're going for, but also it's got plenty of USB ports on the back, which I do pretty much fill all of them. It's also got built-in Wi-Fi 6 with Bluetooth. The Bluetooth's actually pretty bad on this, but we'll save that for later on. But the key feature on this is it's got 4 M2 slots, and they can all run at full speed at the same time without compromising, your graphics cards. So that's why I went for this, because with kind of video work, you don't want to have your project files, your scratch disk, your project media on the same drive as your OS. So you want to have your OS on a separate drive to where all your project files are. For a gaming PC, you can just put it all on one nice NVMe SSD and it's all going to be fine, but with video editing, you need that extra bit of performance. Having the OS on a separate SSD helps. So we've got, for our storage, we've got a 256 gigabyte Kingston A2000, which is a nice DRAM buffered SSD, and it's going to have enough room for all our programs and stuff. Then we have a 2 terabyte Sabrent Rocket PCIe Generation 4 SSD, which we're going to use as our project and scratch drive for doing all the videos. It's not a super fast one. It's like, I think it's like 5,100 megabytes per second or something. It's not the fastest one out there, but the price was very good. And it's a negligible difference really between that and the top end ones. So that's why I went for that. We've also got a 2 terabyte Western Digital SN550 NVMe SSD. That's for all of my games. We've also got a 1 terabyte SanDisk, just a really cheap SATA SSD that I had. That's for my girlfriend to put her rubbish on so that it's not on any of my drives. So she plays The Sims and that kind of thing, so we chuck it on there. We've also got a 4 terabyte 3.5 inch hard drive in there, which we use for cold storage. We use it as a holding space for all the footage that I don't want to yet put on my project media disk. So then we've got plenty of storage array there. We've also got 14 terabyte network attached storage as well for storing all kinds of stuff. We went for 14 terabytes because just not going to run out of room, are you? It's absolutely massive. Plug straight into the back of the router, absolutely sorted. Moving on next is the video card. This is the RTX 3090. It's the Gigabyte Extreme Mega. I don't know what it is. The best one. Extreme Aorus something. It's the one that's got a little LCD screen on it. But we actually took off that LCD screen, took off the whole cooler, of course, because we went liquid cooling. But this has got really fabulous power delivery. It's pretty much one of the best models. It's like Gigabyte's equivalent to the Supreme X. So we know we're not going to be held back in any way there either. 3090 for gaming, it's not really worth it unless you really want to go for the best of the best. But having that 24 gigs of VRAM, very, very handy for video editing, particularly in DaVinci Resolve, where a lot of it is hardware accelerated. So that's why I went for that. Other parts that we have included is the case, of course. So this is the Lian O11 Dynamic, the standard white version, not the XL or any of the other fancy versions. Then we have the power supply. I went for the Corsair HX1000 Platinum. For the 3080 Ti and maybe even the 3080 upwards, you need to have a good power supply, and I suggest over-speccing it. So maybe 1000 watts is a bit much, but I want that fan to be running pretty much silent all the time. So if you over-spec it, the fan's not going to turn as much, so you're going to get slightly better result in that way. So I would suggest 850 watts really for any 3080, 3080 Ti, 3090 system, particularly if you've got one of those posh overclocked cards. It really does help to have that extra power supply, because you get those voltage spikes from the higher end power supplies, which can from the higher end graphics cards, which can sometimes play a bit of havoc with the power supply. So that's why we went in this direction this time. Anything else to add here? I don't think so. So let's move on to the cooling. So we're in for a bit of a mishmash of different brands, just to try to get the aesthetic just right. So we went for, radiator-wise, we went for a couple of Corsair, I think they're called XR5s. They're the slim rads, the white slim rads. And I've got two of those, one for the top and one for the bottom. And then the fans on those are Arctic Bionics P120s, which are basically as good as Noctuas, but they're white. So you can't really get the Noctuas in white, otherwise I probably would have got those. So they're going to work really nicely, and they're very high quality fans and actually pretty well priced. They don't have any RGB, but I didn't want to go massively overboard with the RGB on this one, so I just went with standard white fans for this one. The distribution plate we used is the EKG1, and it's specifically built for the O11 Dynamic and the XL cases, so it does make routing things a lot easier. It's a very clean look. And it also includes, I think, a DDC pump in there as well. Not the highest quality pump, but it's fine. And we can always change the pump out later if it becomes too annoying, too noisy or whatever. Tubing we used was Corsair's HydroX PMMA tubing. And this stuff it's rock hard, but we'll talk more about that later. How much did we get? We got quite a lot of it. I ended up wasting quite a lot of it. So I think I ended up using maybe 5 sticks or so just to do this one build, but probably a more experienced builder would probably be able to get away with just a single pack of tubing, but there you go. Other things that we have here are the EK CPU water block. So this is the Velocity DRGB. Obviously with the distribution plate, it meant that I had to rotate the pump head to the side. Unfortunately with this block I had to replace it because the RGB cable in it was really dodgy, like it wouldn't always connect when I turned the computer on and that kind of thing, so I had to swap that out, but overall worked out fine. The graphics card block is the EK Vector Extreme, I believe, specifically designed for this Gigabyte graphics card, and then we also have the nickel back plate on it as well, and that helps with cooling all that VRAM because it does get quite toasty. Any other liquid cooling parts? I suppose we have all the fittings. So we used Corsair fittings. I think they're, again, XF fittings or something. Hardline fittings. We've also had some rotary 90-degree fittings as well. And in addition to that, we also had some like 90-degree extenders, because trying to bend a tube in 2 different places is very hard, particularly as I haven't done hard loop tubing before. So those are all the fittings. The fluid we used was Corsair's Hydro X, just the clear premix fluid, no colouring added whatsoever. I wanted to go with clear to start with. We can always add colour later, but the problem with putting coloured coolants in, I know it's definitely on soft tubing, perhaps the same on hard tubing, it does deposit a little bit over time and it's quite hard to get that colour out in the future. So I'd rather go with clear for now, and then if I get bored I can add some coloured coolant down the line. So that is everything. It's a long parts list, yes, I do know, but it's fun, and that's what we're here for. So I don't think I can show you the whole build-tage as I normally do in these videos, but what I will do is just throw up some choice pieces of footage, maybe a bit of fun music, and I'll see you again in a bit. overall, the parts, I was happy with how they all looked. EK quality is very high, isn't it? And I'm happy that they all work together. You can mix different brands of parts. It's absolutely no problem whatsoever. Just make sure that you're mixing the correct metals, if that makes sense. Most of them are compatible, apart from aluminium. So if you've got any aluminium parts, especially if they're not coated by nickel or something, don't mix them with other metals, because you're just going to get all kinds of weird corrosion, and it's going to become like a car battery. And they're going to have lots of ionic transfer. It's a bad idea. So try and stick to non-aluminium metals for your first one. It's very important to check that. So we've filled up the loop, we've leak tested it, and I think it just looks absolutely awesome. I was really happy with how it turned out. Some of the bends, yes, they weren't perfect, all right? So I'm not some superstar hard tube water cooling guy. I'm very good at, off-the-shelf parts. And soft tubing, I'm fairly good at that as well. But hard tubing is something I've not got as much experience in. So you can see those tube runs aren't 100% perfect. But is it worth me going in, disassembling all that and doing it again? At this time, no. I mean, maybe in the future I'll go back and do it. But maybe if I change the coolant out, it'd be a good time to do it. But I'm not really that bothered, and it's not, to me, that noticeable. But I understand for the purists out there, yes, you might be going, oh, that one's not 100% straight. Well, yes, I agree with you. But overall, this is hard. Hard tubing is hard in every sense of the word. It is very, very difficult, and not something you should do if you're a novice builder. You need to set aside lots of time to do this. This took me about a week. Considering I'm someone that's built over probably 400 gaming PCs at this point, for me to take a week to do a computer is quite a big deal. That's not, 9 to 5 me working on this, but it's just finding the times at the end of the day and, a spare hour here and there. But this took a long, long, long ass time. Considering I could put together a regular PC in probably about 45 minutes, this was a bit of a shock to the system. I was expecting to have it done a lot quicker, and far too much time spent using my laptop instead of my desktop setup. So yeah, lots of time set aside. Make sure you give yourself plenty of breaks, because it can get very frustrating when you get something, maybe a couple of millimeters out and it doesn't fit. It can get very frustrating. So please just don't stress out. Make this something you're going to enjoy if you're going to do it, and set aside plenty of time. If you've got mission critical work that you need to finish and you don't have an alternative machine to do it on, just don't do this at this time. Save it for a time when it's going to be sensible for you, because if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. Luckily for me, I didn't have any leaks or anything like that, so I didn't have to go in and fix anything after the fact. But it was a long, drawn out process. Do I think it's worth even doing this at all? If you're looking for performance, hard tube cooling is 100% pointless. Just get soft tubing if you really want to go ultra performance, but you're not too bothered about having that rigid tubing look. Yeah, soft tubing is the way to go. I could do a soft tubing one in probably under 2 hours. Hard tubing takes ages, and you don't get any performance difference between hard and soft tubing, at least as far as I know. Should a general gamer get this kind of thing? Nah, no point. Really no point in doing this, unless you really want the looks of it. Other things I would say is I wouldn't bother performance-wise going for any kind of custom loop liquid cooling if you haven't already got the top end parts. So for instance, there's no point getting an RTX 3080 and then liquid cooling it, spending £600 on £600 to £800 on liquid cooling your whole system, when you could have just got a 3080 Ti or 3090 and got way more performance that way. So you got to think about, is this like something I actually want to do? But like I've been saying, it's becoming very boring. I'm saying it a lot, but it's an artistic thing as well. So I understand if you want that artistic look, then perhaps you do want to go for the custom loop liquid cooling. So yeah, there's a lot of rambling there. If you've got any questions about this kind of stuff, please chuck it down in the comments. I'm always happy to try and respond, answer any questions you have about any of the components, any discussions that you'd like to have. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel and all that. That's the end of me sort of talking through here. What I'm going to do now is leave you with some of the test results that I have here on the PC. and we can see if there's any performance difference before and after doing this custom loop liquid cooling. Hope you enjoy those, and see you in the next video. We've got a couple of real nice liquid cooling builds coming up, as well as some of our standard fare, so I'll see you there, baby. Bye!